Hey everybody. And so today we're going to talk about another literary criticism. This one is feminist criticism. And before we get going, I want to give a disclaimer because this one seems to be a really hot button issue, with a lot of people getting offended or up in arms about certain ideas that this particular criticism advocates. And so I want to make it very clear that I am neither condoning or condemning any of these criticisms. I am simply pointing out that they exist. It's important to remember with all of these criticisms that these are just different ways in which people look at the world at large, not just literature, but the world at large. Last time we looked at formalism, or new criticism, and we looked at how the text itself provides meaning. Well, this time the focus shifts from the text itself to the text in a cultural or societal context. And so when you're looking at feminist criticism, you want to pay attention to not only the text itself, but also the author, as well as the time period in which the poem or piece of work was written. And so again, I have this PowerPoint that I'm going to share with you, and so I'm not going to read this whole thing to you. I just want to refer back to it for a few main things. First of all, when we're talking about feminist criticism, what we're really looking at is a power struggle between the genders, male and female. And what a feminist critic will often say is that there is a disparity between uh, how the genders are treated politically, socially, economically, and you can see this permeating all throughout our culture, not just in our writing. And they say that you can see this permeated throughout our culture because of how males have traditionally dominated the culture. This is why you see things like um, G.I. Joe action figures versus Barbie. Uh, boys, it's okay for boys to roughhouse and play and get dirty and do all those things, but girls need to be pretty and they need to focus on their looks. And if a girl is deemed too smart, she's considered almost a pariah or an outcast. Things like that. Um, you see this in our films. Think about the amount of times that you've seen a movie or a show where a female character has been captured or kidnapped or imprisoned in some way, and a strong, heroic male character has to save her. This happens so often that there's an actual term for it. It's called the damsel in distress. And anytime, and I'm going to pick on Disney for my examples here, anytime we have a female who rises to power or asserts her authority or asserts herself as something of power or authority or might, she is seen as evil or wicked, or something to be uh, looked down upon. Look at the princess in Brave. Look at the evil stepmother. Look at the evil queen. Look at how many times the princesses in the different Marvel films, or not Marvel, I'm sorry, Disney films, are captured or imprisoned. So, um, typically, we have um, a language in our various texts, whether it's a poem or a story or whatever. And in this language, you see the subversion of the female and the rise of the male. the male characters will often use their authority, their power, to maintain control. They're usually seen as more capable. The females are typically seen as less than, or defined by their looks or their usefulness to the males rather than their own agency, their own self-sufficiency. Okay. When we're looking at this lens in practice, the simple thing to do is look at how the females in the poem or in the piece of writing are portrayed. What opportunities are available to them compared with the males? What values are specific to the specific genders? And is it reinforcing or challenging the status quo? Keep in mind that in a feminist criticism, the status quo, what is considered ordinary or average, is that the males are in charge and they're dominating the females. Some literature you'll find challenges this and allows the females to fight that status quo and rise above. Look at Mulan, for example. So, some questions to ask. How is the relationship between the genders portrayed? How are male and female roles defined? What constitutes masculinity and femininity? And what does the writing reveal about the operations of the patriarchy? Okay, so let's take a look at this in practice. And again, I'm going to keep using this same poem throughout all of my lenses that I show you, just for continuity's sake, and to show you that these lenses are just that. They're just different ways to look at the world at large. And you can look at a simple piece of writing. You can look at a poem, for example, and you can look at this poem through the various lenses and come to different ideas as to the meaning of the poem based on the lens that you choose to look at it through. And we see this in our day-to-day lives as well. Again, our backgrounds, our upbringings, the way that we were taught, the lives that we've led, lead us to look at the world in different ways from one another. And that's okay. This is just another way to look at the world. And so I'm going to look at the red wheelbarrow using a feminist criticism this time, and we'll see how it's different. Or I should say how it arrives at different meanings from other criticisms we've looked at it with. So here we go. The Red Wheelbarrow by William Carlos Williams. So much depends upon a red wheelbarrow glazed with rainwater beside the white chickens. Okay, so there's a couple of different things that we can do. And when you're doing a feminist criticism, the first thing you want to do is look at the author. In this case, we have William Carlos Williams. Okay, that is a male. So in a feminist criticism, we're already starting to question, okay, a male wrote this, so there's going to be some gender assumptions. Okay, there's going to be some stereotyping that this author is going to make in regards to the genders. So let's take a look at this. And there's a couple of different ways you can look at this. But the first thing I like to do is I like to assign genders to the various subjects in the poem. Now, if you have a poem that's dealing with people, it becomes rather easy to assign gender to the little boy or the little girl or whatever for the purposes of analysis. When you have a poem like this where there are no people, there's just objects and animals, well, you have to assign gender to those things in order to analyze it. And there's a couple of different ways you can look at this. So one way is to say that we have first a red wheelbarrow, and then we have white chickens. Okay, those are our two objects in here. And so one of them has to be male, one of them has to be female. If I were to assign red wheelbarrow to male and white chickens to female, here's what I see. And again, I'm not saying that this is the only way to look at this. I'm not saying that I'm right. I'm just saying that this is one interpretation using this criticism. So The Red Wheelbarrow by William Carlos Williams. So much depends upon a red wheelbarrow glazed with rainwater beside the white chickens. I'm going to say that the red wheelbarrow represents the male. It is a working tool. It is a working device. It is put to use. And the white chickens are basically just kind of standing around. Okay, these are the females. They're not doing anything. They're not contributing in any way. They are white, which in typical stereotypical fashion, when you think of white and you think of female, your mind could go to wedding dresses, for example. The idea of purity, innocence, virginity. Okay, so much depends upon a red wheelbarrow glazed with rainwater, a hard-working man glazed with sweat beside his woman, or having his woman beside him. So much of what depends upon a red wheelbarrow glazed with rainwater beside the white chickens. So much depends upon a hardworking man in this economy, in this social structure, in this system, in this country, with a trusty woman by his side. That's one way to look at it. You could flip the script and you could say that the red wheelbarrow, it represents the female, and the white chickens are the males, and that she is basically a tool to be used. She is beside her man. Red being a symbol of beauty. So those are two different ways to look at this. Either way you look at it, you have the female being subjugated, the male being the head, the lead, the authority, and the female being cast down or cast aside or thought of as less than. If you think back to the metaphors poem that you looked at for your formalism activity, think about how unhappy she was that she was pregnant and what she felt like that was doing to her body, to her image, to the way she looked. Her sense of worth was tied to having a child, having beauty, maintaining her appearance. Again, that would be a feminist criticism approach to that particular poem. Hopefully this makes sense. After watching this video, or before watching this video, make sure that you also check out the other video that I posted that will hopefully give you another closer glimpse as to what feminist criticism is all about, and check out the PowerPoint that I've shared with you. Okay, thank you.